Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce something to you that's not only characterized by its beauty and preciousness. Due to its history, it also holds something mysterious in store. The art and study collections of the Royal Porcelain Manufactory Berlin, KPM, and their hidden secrets. In my presentation, I will first give you a brief outline of the history of the art and study collections of the Royal Porcelain Manufactory Berlin. I will then introduce you to the various items of the collections. And in the last part of my lecture, I will present three key objects in order to explain the often curious connections between purchased study objects and KPM's artistic production. We will begin with one of the darkest chapters in the history of KPM, as well as in the history of mankind, World War II. In the night of November 22nd to 23rd, in 1943, Allied air raids destroyed the buildings of KPM Berlin to such an extent that production was no longer possible. Parts of the porcelain production were outsourced to Selb, Bavaria, where a provisional manufactory was set up. Eyewitnesses reported that the manufacturer was not prepared for this air raid. All the manufacturer's historically valuable collections were still in place, in the basement of the destroyed buildings. An emergency evacuation of all collections began, also including the very extensive ceramic collection of KPM. All stocks were moved to a safe storage place, a former salt mine, near the city of Halle in Saxony-Anhalt. There, parts of the collection were destroyed during the war through military actions, but also by penetrating water. We assume that the most important ceramic collection was brought by Soviet troops to St. Petersburg in Russia. This very precious and unique collection is still missing today. We talk about around 40,000 pieces. After the end of the war, the surviving art and study collections were transported to the eastern part of Berlin. They were stored in the basement of the Märkisches Museum, where they stayed for over 30 years. In 1981, a remarkable exchange took place in Berlin, in a city divided not only politically, but also physically by a wall. The East Berlin government asked for the sculptures designed by Karl Friedrich Schinkel for the Palace Bridge, which should be restored and repaired. These figures were kept in the western part of Berlin. In return, the government in West Berlin demanded the delivery of the art and study collections of the KPM stored in East Berlin. Finally, the exchange took place and the collection were handed over to the West Berlin government in the summer of 1981. However, it was decided not to return the collection items to the Royal Porcelain Manufactory in West Berlin, which had restarted production in 1955. Bad storage had damaged large parts of the collections. Therefore, it was determined that the collection should be conserved and restoration work should be carried out first. As an important cultural heritage, the art and study collection should finally be looked after by a museum's institution, which should also be responsible for the conservation and scholarly research of the historic objects. For these reasons, the collection were entrusted to the State Palace Administration in West Berlin and were housed in new storage rooms in Charlottenburg Palace. In the following decades, the collection were scientifically supervised by Professor Winfried Baer and his wife Ilse Baer, and were looked after by a well-trained paper conservator, Dr. Jakob Kurpik. By the way, please note the man on the picture is not the husband of Ilse Baer, not Professor Baer, but it's a lovely picture. I found it in our collection. Parts of the collection have been published and exhibited since 1983. a comprehensive exhibition on almost all parts of the collection was organized in 2013 to celebrate the great anniversary of KPM Berlin. The entire art and study collection were packed and relocated in 2015 and were finally able to move into modern storage facilities in Potsdam in 2017, where they are located today. This brief overview of the history of the collection shows that since 1943, many objects have been destroyed or are missing today. The exact number of the lost object is not known. We are not even able to estimate the losses. Probably we own today only half of the original collection items. And what is even more serious, almost all important keys to the collection has also been lost, the purchase and inventory books. So the question that keeps bothering me is, what can these collections still tell us today? Before discussing this matter, let me briefly introduce you to the most important collection groups. Today, the manufactory's art and study collection comprises over 46,000 items. The collection includes, first, the inventory of historic documents. It consists of nearly 500 objects today. For example, documents on general business transactions and processes, records on artistic trends and technical innovation within the KPM, but also the Royal account books, which provide information about regal gifts of porcelain. One of the oldest documents is the acquisition file signed by the Prussian King Frederick II on the 19th of September 1763, the founding date of the Royal Porcelain Manufactory in Berlin. So you can see in regard to Meissen and Wetzi, KPM is a latecomer. The library collection, it contains nearly 3,000 volumes. In the 18th century, the books were mainly used by the manufactory as sources of images. Book illustrations provided porcelain painters with important information. They served as inspiration, or they were used as visual source material for converting a desired motif. The collection of graphic works and prints form the largest stock of objects, around 32,000 objects. They include design templates that served as visual source material for porcelain painting. They included all information about the motif size, the decoration sequence, and all information needed to convert the design into a three-dimensional composition. Among them, prints of the 17th and 18th century form the oldest and rarest collection in the KPM Archives. They not only offered numerous picture motifs, they also offered an important basis for training. Apprentices could train themselves by using engravings made by famous artists and gain practice in composition, reproducing figures, or varying styles. Within the manufactory, prints were also used as a source of inspiration to design porcelain decors or porcelain figures. Around 1800, KPM started to collect oil paintings. Today, this collection still comprises around 200 works. Most of the paintings show views of the royal buildings and parks in Berlin and Potsdam, as well as the royal family former summer residences in Silesia and the Rhineland. The size of the paintings are small, so that they could be used as a copy template at the porcelain painter's workplace. By the beginning of the 19th century, the quality of porcelain colors and the spectrum of colors had become closer to that of oil painting. The attention arose to compete with oil painting. Copying oil paintings now became part of the painting training at KPM. In particular, the dinner services and vases created on royal commissions were intended to be on par with academic art works and, like them, to be recognized as part of the academic art world. The requirements for porcelain painting of this kind included not only the academic training of the painting staff, but also a kind of technique close to oil painting that necessarily required technical innovations, such as the development of new colors and porcelain pastes. The collection of photographs. In the second half of the 19th century, photographs replaced paintings as image sources. The Berlin manufactory was always very open to new technologies and had used them to its advantage. Shortly after 1855, KPM Berlin began to collect this new pictorial medium. Photographs were to become the most important visual medium for porcelain painters to create, for example, topographical views. For comparison, you can see two views of the new palace in Sanssouci Park in Potsdam. One is an oil painting by Carl Daniel Freydank on the left side, and the other is a historical photograph by Johann Franz Michels. Both views are about the same size. The KPM painter Carl Daniel Freydank first made sketches on site and used these as a basis for creating the oil painting. Freydank probably needed 1 or 2 weeks to complete the painting of the new palace. The photographer Michels was able to produce the same topographical motif in 1 or 2 days. For a commercial enterprise like KPM, time means money. For this reason, it's not surprising that photographs became the most important inspiration sources and patterns in the artistic production of KPM in the second half of the 19th century. Photographs reproduced a motif or object exactly. They were quickly available and could be converted into a color study at any time in the KPM's painter's studio. The color study then provided the model for the executed porcelain painting. Finally, I would like to introduce you to a collection that is quite unusual in the possession of a porcelain manufactory, the KPM's collection of silk fabrics. A small collection of around 200 silk fragments has survived, which served as a sample collection of for the manufactory. The textile collection, in the form of small fabric samples in various colors, consists mainly of 18th century French silk fabrics. Among them are woven and embroidered pieces, with floral motifs predominating, often accompanied by striped patterns, bows, or lace ribbons. What were these fabric samples used for? Should they provide inspiration for new decors? Should they help painters to reproduce the historical fabrics of porcelain figures? Questions that keep me busy for several years, but answering them requires further research. We will therefore now turn our attention to some of the puzzles that have been solved and whose results would give us a deeper insight into the artistic work of the Berlin Porcelain Manufactory. First example. When I began to write an inventory of the art and study collections, I came across a set of 7 watercolors with putty motifs. Above all, I was amazed by the quality of the watercolors, and of course I was charmed by the funny motifs. You see putty handling or playing with kitchen tools, an ox head garnished with artichokes, a lobster hugging a turtle, and an exotic scene with a pineapple presented by 2 South Americans. Another watercolor shows a photo with hunted game, flanked by 2 hunting dogs, followed by a depiction of the sea with fishing putty hauling in their fishing nets. And 2 smaller watercolors present 2 putty chasing insects, not always successfully, as you can see. Obviously, all the watercolors relate to the theme of food, the origin of food, its preparation, and annoying insect that disturb the delicious meal. Could there be designs for porcelain tile paintings, to decorate a royal kitchen or the food department of a shop? Why and for what purpose were these designs made? The answer came from a book shown to me by a colleague who was cataloguing the KPM library at the same time. She found a richly illustrated book edition published by the art historian and director of the Museum of Decorative Arts in Berlin, Julius Lessing, on the occasion of the silver wedding anniversary of the Prussian crown prince and princess in 1883. As a festive gift for the Prussian Crown Prince Frederick and his wife Victoria, a daughter of the British Queen Victoria, 14 German cities had ordered a porcelain service from KPM to honor the princely couple. The festive gift not only included a porcelain dinner service, but also a complete dining room with furniture, chandeliers, wall decoration, and even a handmade tablecloth. This special gift should demonstrate the impressive capabilities of Prussian craftsmanship and was intended to be seen as a public showroom for the various manufacturing companies of the Prussian kingdom. The dining room and its furnishings were intended to impress the international guests of the Crown Prince and Crown Princess with a fine craftsmanship and high quality of Prussian industry. The artistic highlight of the festive table was a dinner service from the Royal Porcelain Manufactory in Berlin, which comprises over 400 pieces. The artistic model of the service design was provided by a KPM dinner service made for the Prussian King Frederick II in the year 1765. The service, designed in the Friderizian Rococo style and named Relief Zierat, is still one of the KPM's trademarks and is even offered today in a slightly modified version. The Friderizian Rococo style, with its elegant ornamentation, was much appreciated by the Crown Princess Victoria, who came from Great Britain, where this style was not very familiar. Together with her husband and their children, Victoria lived over the summer months in the new palace in Potsdam, which was built in the Rococo style and whose artistic decor she complemented with modern furniture in a similar design. The historical form and the ornamentation of the porcelain service corresponded to the personal taste of the Crown Prince and Princess. Similar to the couple's apartments in the new palace, the existing historical style was adapted to the contemporary taste by using individual modern additions. These included not only service pieces that complemented the historical service model, such as the half-moon-shaped compote bowls or the round bowls with a three-part interior. You see them within the green markings. This also included the modern putti motifs that were placed on the most prominent pieces of the dinner service, the large roast and fish platters, and on the tureens and their bases. Thanks to the publication of Julius Lessing, we also know who designed these motifs. The most important German painter and draftsman of the late 19th century, Adolf Menzel. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to introduce you to the impressive oeuvre of Adolf Menzel, but his artistic fame is still present in Germany and its museum's collection today. Menzel was a unique draftsman and an outstanding painter. He was very creative, technically brilliant, and he had a sharp sense of humor. Characteristics that are reflected in the watercolors presented here. Menzel also was a good businessman who regarded his drawings and watercolors as financial investments. He only lent the manufactory the decorative patterns he had produced for the KPM diner service. His watercolors were then copied by the KPM painter Hermann Loschen in order to use them as templates for the porcelain painters. So the first puzzle is solved. The presented watercolors in the KPM collections are copies after Adolf Menzel. But what happened to Menzel's original watercolors? They were sold by Menzel to his art dealer. You find them today in the collection of the Museum of Prints and Drawings in Berlin. Menzel was once paid to produce the designs, and he then sold them on as works of art. A one-work performance with double payment. I would say that is a very clever business idea. And there's also a happy ending. The service for the Prussian crown prince and princess was considered lost for a very long time. 10 years later, I received an email with a photo. The picture in the attachment showed the tureen with a poto motif designed by Menzel. An American collector wanted to offer the tureen for sale with some other service parts. We succeeded in acquiring 100 parts of the diner service for our ceramic collection. On the occasion of the KPM's anniversary in the year 1713, a nicely decorated table with the porcelain service was presented in Charlottenburg Palace. Example 2. Let us now turn to another example, a small collection of Italian fan leaves that were created in Rome around 1790. The beautiful colored fan leaves are not folded, and there were Italian inscriptions. It seems as if they have been purchased for their neoclassical motifs, combining topographical views of Rome with rich, grotesque ornaments. At this time, fan leaves were acquired as charming travel souvenirs during the grand tour of the European nobility. They were indeed a must-have of every aristocratic traveler to Italy. We still do not know how these fan leaves came to KPM, but we know when. Based on the manufactory stamps, they must have entered the study collections around 1790. During this time, the manufactory faced major challenges. In 1786, Frederick II died. He was a founder of the manufactory. His death marked the end of the Friderizian Rococo style in Prussia. The following king, a nephew, Frederick William II, preferred the modern style of neoclassicism, which was widespread in England and on the continent, but not in Prussia at this time. As a royal manufactory, KPM was forced to serve the king's demands. Otherwise, the economic success of the company would have been at risk. So something had to be done to restructure the manufactory stylistically and artistically, and, if possible, within a very short time. We know from the surviving account books that KPM invested a great amount of money in these years to acquire new modern patterns and templates, especially prints. The purchased motifs were intended to help the porcelain painters and the modelers to train themselves in a different stylistic language. Antique figurative scenes and decorative systems in particular were studied. The example of Bartolozzi's fan design with the famous motif of the wedding procession of Cupid and Psyche, inspired by an antique gem from the collection of Lord Marlborough, clearly shows one disadvantage of these prints: the lack of color. The new style demanded not only a different ornamentation, but also a different color scheme. The colors of ancient wall paintings, for example the Pompeian red, also influenced modern decorations in the neoclassical style, like a modern wall decoration or the design of a porcelain cup. The presented fan leaves offered the KPM artist and chemist the opportunity to study the color scheme and to develop new artistic solutions. This change from the Rococo style to the style of neoclassicism developed gradually at KPM and can be understood as a working process. Firstly, the manufacturers seem to have taken the topographical views of Rome as a model, as documented by a plate from around 1790. However, the Berlin manufacturers soon developed decors that interpret antique models in an artistically and technically independent way. Shortly after 1800, KPM presented a new porcelain decor inspired by Roman mosaic work. In fact, KPM was the first European manufacturer to create micro-mosaic decorations on porcelain, which were often combined with Florentine Prêt-à-Jour work. Both types of decor were inspired by travel souvenirs from Italy. Especially Roman micro-mosaics were popular travel souvenirs at that time. Among others, they were made by the Mosaic Workshop in the Vatican, where pieces of jewelry, plaques, or snuff boxes were decorated with colored miniature stones made of marble or glass paste. The KPM painters imitated these mosaic works by adding fine lines to the decorations that looked like the outlines of tiny mosaic stones. Executed with technical perfection and often combined with an elaborate gilding, the Berlin manufacturer developed elegant, fashionable porcelain objects that freely interpreted antique references. This unique result of neoclassical porcelain design was encouraged by the Prussian king's preference for mosaic and natural stone work. Both Frederick II and his successor Frederick William II preferred to decorate the interiors of their royal residences with precious marble work. The new-built marble house in Potsdam, which Frederick William II had furnished according to his personal taste, must have been of particular interest to KPM. The furnishings included 7 marble fireplaces that were ordered in Rome. 2 of them were made in the workshops of Giacomo Raffaelli. One of the mantelpieces was decorated with mosaic work, depicting landscape scenes with Roman monuments. You see it within the red markings. The design of the motifs come very close to the motifs on the fan leaves presented here. Was it the work of Giacomo Raffaelli that inspired KPM? We do not know. As a royal manufactory, KPM was integrated into a well-functioning news network. The directors of the manufacturer were always in contact with the leading artists and architects of the time to obtain information about the specific interest of the Prussian court, and above all, about the king's personal artistic preferences. KPM certainly paid attention to the king's purchases from Rome. Maybe you have noticed what has been placed on the mantelpieces: English stoneware. Indeed, Frederick William II paid great attention to the modern products of the Wedgwood manufactory, a fact that was noted by KPM with deep concern. At the king's request, all the rooms in the marble house were fitted with Wedgwood ceramics, in total over 52 pieces. Not a single KPM item can be found in the newly furnished country home of Frederick II in Potsdam. This decision must have caused great excitement in the Berlin porcelain manufactory. And this unexpected competition put KPM under pressure. Discussion took place to strive for the tasteful forms of the Wedgwood manufactory. However, these attempts did not lead to convincing results, and KPM was forced to develop its own successful products. During this challenging period, KPM actually managed to go its own way. to expand its knowledge and develop artistic solutions that corresponded to the taste and the ideas of the time. KPM developed its own innovative version of neoclassical porcelain painting with its mosaic imitating porcelain decorations. Enriched by natural stone imitations and combined with an ornate gilding, even continued in the inside of the cup, unique porcelain objects were created that were not intended for everyday use. On the contrary, the porcelains looked like elegant metal objects, decorated with gleaming colors. Precious items that were collected by connoisseurs and served as objects of aesthetic contemplation. Like fashionable souvenirs from Italy, they evoked memories of glorious antiquity. Let us now turn to the last example of my presentation. A small collection of historical photographs showing images of wall and ceiling decorations from the Rococo period. Most of these photographs are no longer in good condition. They are yellowed and heavily faded. On some photographs you can recognize fine pencil lines, as they were applied to copy a motif. The photo collection was obviously used by KPM artists for study purposes. But for what purpose and why? The Berlin manufactory already possessed an excellent collection of ornamental engravings from the Rococo period. So why did KPM buy new study materials? Presumably, the technical possibilities of this new medium were appealing. Photos were able to bring plastic stucco and carving elements to life. As with the use of a magnifying glass, details were easily recognizable and easy to study. In the late 19th century, the Rococo style experienced a revival in Prussia. During this period, the KPM manufacturer produced porcelain objects with rich raised gold decoration, the ornamentation of which was mainly inspired by Rococo decorations. The relief decoration was created with a fine porcelain paste and then highlighted by a thin layer of gold. The porcelain bodies looked as if they have been covered with fine gold embroideries. Small variations in the different levels of the gold relief enhanced this effect, attracting with a dazzling reflection of light and shine. The virtuosity with which the KPM gilders executed these ornaments is outstanding. The patterns of the gilded decoration were inspired by a wide range of motifs. In addition to pattern books, the KPM also used photographs as sources of inspiration. These photographs were often of architectural elements, such as detailed images of Rococo ceilings and wall decorations. Inspired by these Rococo examples, the KPM artists selected architectural elements from the photographs and transformed them into new ornamental patterns for porcelain objects. The design template for a Victoria vase by Gustav Kämpfer, for example, was inspired by a heart-shaped Rococo ornament from a stucco ceiling decoration in the Würzburg residence. The design was executed as a raised gold decoration on a Victoria vase and used as a framing element for a large-scale flower and fruit painting. Once you become aware of this combination of stucco and ceiling decorations from the Rococo period as models for contemporary decorations of the late 19th century, this interplay actually seems self-evident. Ornament templates have always been created for all sections of the applied arts. Why should a ceiling decoration not also be useful for the development of a plate decoration? It is fascinating that KPM was not only inspired by the ornaments of stucco decoration, but also realized them fully sculpturally as raised gold decoration. The Berlin manufactory thus demonstrated its technical and artistic mastery and the creative interplay of tradition and innovation. Finally, 3 puzzles were solved. But there's still the unsolved mystery of the KPM's textile collection. Since 2023, a research project has been examining this collection, delving into the connection between textiles and porcelain. The first remarkable findings have surfaced and will be presented in a forthcoming publication in the coming years. So stay in touch, and many thanks for your attention.